Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to have you all here. My name is Gloria Dejanew, and I serve on the marketing team here at Teachstone, and I will be your moderator today. We have lots of good content today, so I'm going to get us started with some quick housekeeping, and then we can get started. First, we are recording this webinar, and the recording will be sent out to everyone that is registered. With that recording, you will receive a copy of the slide deck, as well as a certificate of attendance, and then any other resources or links that are referenced throughout the discussion today. Next, there is a questions box open to you. Take a moment to find it on your screen and let us know who you are, where you're joining us from, what your role is. The questions box can be a bit confusing because you think it's only for questions, but all commentary goes through that box, and we do encourage questions. We do encourage comments. If you have any questions or comments throughout the presentation today, just send them in. We have staff on hand ready to engage with you. And we might hold some questions for the end, or we might end up responding to some questions via email after the fact, but we'll do our best to address all the questions that you guys have today. But with that out of the way, I have the pleasure of introducing today's panel. I will start with you, Beja. Beja is the Regional Director for the Midwest here at Teachstone, with a bachelor's degree in sociology and education from the University of Texas in Austin. Beja began her career as a 2-year-old teacher while she was in college. And then from that experience, she has served children and families in the Dallas and Fort Worth area in many capacities, and continues to be a thought partner as our regional director at Teachstone. And in her spare time, she loves cooking, traveling, and spending time with her nieces and nephews. So welcome, Beja, and thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. Alongside Beja is Darlene Estes Del Rey. Dr. Darlene serves as the Senior Director for Strategic Partnerships here at Teachstone. In this role, she works with existing and new partners to serve their efforts in ensuring every child and every educator has access to high-quality early learning experiences, education, and supports. Her early learning career expands across the public and the private sectors, including Montessori, magnet schools, state-funded preschool, higher education, and state education and agency work. You name it, Darlene has done it. Before coming to Teachstone, Darlene served as the Assistant Commissioner of Early Learning with the Tennessee Department of Education, working to define, measure, and spread quality early learning practices across settings and funding models. She led successful initiatives that enhanced the quality of voluntary pre-K and increased the number of children being more ready to enter kindergarten. And the class observation, the class tool continues to be a key lever in that work. And throughout her work at State Education Agency, Darlene also worked closely with early childhood education leaders, teachers, coaches, researchers, advocates, policymakers, and the Head Start State Collaborator in the birth to 5 and the pre-K to 2nd grade spaces, with a focus on quality environments, teacher-child interactions, early literacy foundations, and inclusive best practices. Welcome, Darlene. That is always a mouthful, but I love reading it because you are just a rock star. So thank you for joining us today. It's always good to have you in this space. And finally, our guest today is Nicole Allen. Nicole has 20 years of experience in early childhood education and workforce development in the state of Texas. She understands the critical intersection between early childhood education and professional development. In her current position as child care contract manager, Nicole is responsible for managing the state QRIS program, Texas Rising Star, in Tarrant County. She also manages all quality initiatives sponsored by the County Workforce Development Board. In her role, Nicole has developed and implemented several projects that have had positive impact on the early childhood education field. Some of these include the build out of the Texas Early Childhood Professional Development System for childcare teachers and administrators to track training and education, a cost of quality study that demonstrates the true price tag to operate a high quality early childhood program, supported a county-wide class assessment initiative, and the creation of a professional learning community for Texas Rising Star mentors and assessors. She also sits on a number of boards and committees, including the Early Learning Alliance, the Teach Advisory Board, the Early Childhood Education Research Connections Advisory Board, and has a broad perspective to share. So, Nicole, thank you. Welcome. We're excited to hear from you today. So lots of experience and knowledge at the table today. But I'm going to get us started, or Darlene, you're going to get us started with a quick poll, but we're going to run it through the chat. And then we can get started and dive into the content that we have.
Great, thanks, Gloria. So we'd love to, you heard about us. We'd love to learn something more about you. So please indicate in the chat box, tell us who you are. Do you represent today a program administrator, maybe a school leader, district leader, state leader, coach, teacher? Maybe you're from Head Start tuning in. So let us know who you are, or maybe you have a role that's not on the screen. You could also put that in the chat, but would love to know who's joining us today. So take just a moment there and pop it into the chat. And we'll keep going, but you can keep putting your role there, and we'll be able to connect better with you. So I have the pleasure of kicking off today's discussion, and we're having such a great conversation today about continuous quality improvement systems, but also really with a focus on teacher-child interactions. So more specifically, we're going to talk about what are teacher-child interactions and why are they so important, and what's going on in quality rating and improvement systems that we want to know about and should pay attention to. And most importantly, we're going to have a feature of Texas and all the exciting things happening there. You're going to hear Beja share about the Texas Rising Star and the shift to teacher-child interactions. And then you're going to hear directly, this is my favorite part, hear directly from Nicole how Tarrant County is really doing it like a rock star. And they've created buy-in on the class tool, and you're going to hear how they scaled class and how they really made a difference with the work that they're doing with their mentors and providers. So next slide, please. So before we dive into all that Beja and Nicole have to share with us, I just wanted to anchor us in the interaction piece. And we know that class is centered around interactions, and that's because teachers are already interacting with children. It's what they do best, actually. It's what they do every day that makes a difference in that classroom. And we can build upon those very interactions that they are already doing that boost the quality of the experiences children and families have every day. And if you wanted to categorize those interactions, they would fall into emotional support, classroom organization, and instructional support. But I thought you might want to hear from another provider to hear just how the measure of quality interactions is making a difference in her program. So we're going to key up a video from Betty Woodward and hear what she has to say about measuring interactions.
We have, since 2012, used the class tool to go in and do observations of teachers in their classrooms. We do our entire district with the 4th grade through the 12th grade. And we do an observation each fall. We take that data and give that individually back to teachers. We aggregate it at the grade level, at the subject level, and at the school level. And then teachers within their schools work with that data and identify trends, they identify strengths, they identify opportunities for improvement, and they develop action plans. We share the research behind the tool, and it helps teachers understand what effective instruction is, the emotional support, the classroom organization, and the instructional domain. As we work with that common language, we have 27 schools in our district. We can be at school A, and teachers at school A can talk about what it looks like to have teacher sensitivity and positive climate in the classroom and look at student engagement. And at school C, they can have the same conversations with the same language. That's really helped. And it helps them to reflect on that, and it helps them continually improve their instruction.
Great. Very brief, but I think powerful video that also was able to show us the power of interactions across age levels. So even though the children look different in size and the classrooms looked a little bit different, the power of interactions is transformational across age levels. And so that's why a focus on quality really does include interactions as a key. So just briefly, like if you're new to QRIS or you're new to the conversation, like just to give a high level definition of what is a QRIS, it stands for Quality Rating Improvement System. And it's one of the levers that states use to support quality mostly in early learning and education systems, but it's also an infrastructure that's built so that usually there's things built in like coaching supports and professional development supports. There's also an accountability piece where they will actually measure and have some benchmarks of quality to meet. And so these can vary very differently state to state. And states choose different things to focus on in their QRIS, and they have different levels and what they qualify as different levels of quality per state. So it's really interesting if you want to do some digging in to see how that looks different from state to state. It's an interesting research and just kind of a discussion. You might be wondering, do all states have QRIS? And for the most part, they all have some form of this. It might not be an official QRIS system. It could be a QIS where the rating is not as emphasized as much. So it's a quality improvement system. Or it might be more of a CQI where they focus on continuous quality improvement. But in some way, shape, or form, everyone's focused on quality because quality matters for our early, youngest learners. And so we have to have a way to define quality, to measure it, to support quality, and to make it a system approach, because at the end of the day, the children deserve what's best and educators deserve the best support to make that happen. So we're seeing a great trend in the QRIS systems today. Initially, it seemed to be all about accountability, and that's what most folks thought about. It's like, okay, I'm going to get assessed, and I might get assessed once or twice a year, and that's going to give me data, and that could support like things I need to work on. But we're seeing this incredible just shift towards taking that data and transforming that into real time, real genuine feedback that helps improve practice every day, where teachers own that data and say like, this is what I'm going to work on. This is my data. This is how I can work with a coach or a mentor or take professional development that can improve the way I interact with my own students or what I'm doing every day in my practice. And so we're seeing this trend of having it both, whereas the data is used to inform improvement from this continuous quality improvement lens. And I'm so excited to hear how Texas is doing this and the shifts they've made. So I'm going to give it over to Beja to kick us off to talk about this exciting shift.
Well, thank you so much, Darlene. And as Gloria mentioned, I reside here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I am a Texas girl at heart. So I am super excited to join today to talk about the amazing things that are happening in Texas. So let's learn more about the QRIS in Texas. Texas Rising Star is a voluntary quality rating and improvement system for child care providers participating in the Texas Workforce Commission's subsidized child care program. Texas Rising Star certification is available to licensed centers as well as licensed and registered child care home facilities that meet the particular criteria. TRS offers 3 levels of quality certification to encourage child care and early learning programs to attain progressively higher levels of quality. These certification levels are tied to a graduated enhanced reimbursement rate for children receiving subsidies. Every 4 to 5 years, a work group is assembled to review the Texas Rising Star program. With support from TWC, also known as Texas Workforce Commission, the work group leads an expansive and collaborative review of the program that involves stakeholders from across the great state of Texas. In June 2021 of this year, Texas Rising Star increased their Category 2, that is known as TeacherChild Interactions, from 20% to 40%. 40% of the overall assessment score is weighed substantially more. What is evaluated in category 2, you might ask yourself? This section of the assessment tool takes a close look at classroom ratios, warm and responsive style, facilitated language and support, play-based interactions and guidance, and support for children's regulation and instructional formats and approaches to learning. Texas recognizes that interactions matter. This is so exciting. This is leaps and bounds from the previous revisions to the tool. And one area workforce board in North Texas has proven that high quality interactions lead to high quality learning outcomes for children. Tarrant County utilizes the class tool as an additional resource to mentor and support child care centers and family child care homes in their area. I am beyond excited. I cannot contain my excitement for us to have a deeper conversation with Nicole Allen, who is the child care contract manager, and she's going to share more about their class journey during our conversation today. So good afternoon, Nicole. Nicole, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Hello.
So fun fact about Nicole and I, the tenure of our careers have been very, very similar and parallel. She and I actually met as neighboring center directors in Arlington, Texas, home of the Cowboys, as I'm sure she's going to allude to, so people can know where Arlington, Texas is. But that is how she and I met, and she was actually my mentoring director. So as a new director at that time, she was more of a senior and tenured director, and she sort of took me under her wing, and that was my beginning road to management in that early childcare space. So I think it's amazing that the trajectory of our careers have been very similar, and we're still thought partners in the field as it pertains to the amazing changes that have happened here in Texas. So we are just going to go ahead and dive on in. Nicole, are you on mute? Are you off mute?
No, I am off mute.
You are off mute. All right. So let's go ahead and dive in. So the context of our conversation today is again, as I mentioned, for Nicole to really share their class journey in Tarrant County. I'm going to turn it over to Nicole now so she can sort of reintroduce herself and talk briefly about her board area. And then we're going to dive in with some Q&A. So I will turn it over to you, Nicole.
Yes, well, thank you, Beja, and thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this very important conversation. As Beja has explained, our quality rated improvement system is titled the Texas Rising Star Program, and it is housed within the subsidy program. Texas is extremely unique that we are not operated from a state agency per se. The Texas Workforce Commission has us broken out in 28 different local workforce development boards. And so what that means is that although we all are regulated and we have rules and guidance that come straight from TWC, we also have something that is called local control, where we are able to implement innovative programs and initiatives and pilots within our own individual workforce board areas that allows us to really show the impact in our communities. As you all know, Texas is a very vast state. So what works in North Texas might not work in South Texas. So to give you a little bit of context of where Tarrant County actually resides, as Beja stated, it is the home of the Cowboys, the stadium, and the Rangers. So the Cowboys and the Rangers live in Tarrant County. Arlington and Fort Worth are the two major cities that house in Tarrant County. We are one of the largest board areas, and our landscape of providers is all operating majority in urban settings.
Awesome. Thank you for that context, Nicole. So as I mentioned, let's just get to it. Let's dive on in. So Nicole, let's start with you sharing at a high level about Tarrant County's class journey.
Yes, so like I mentioned, we are allowed to do really fun projects and initiatives within our local areas as we see fit. Class, obviously I've been working in this field for 20 years, so I'm not new. I was never new to class, but we were really trying to figure out how to create a system in Tarrant County that aligned all of our early childhood programs, particularly the mentors that work in our programs. We are so lucky to have strong relationships with a lot of community partners that we have participated on so many different projects. So class to us seemed like a natural progression into how we were going to elevate quality in our centers while working in partnership with our programs to ensure that each one of us are speaking the same language, utilizing the same tool, and then providing the same professional development across all of our early learning programs. It was started in 2018 with just an idea in our community collaboration that is called the Early Learning Alliance, where we have about 50 partners that come together monthly, quarterly, weekly sometimes, to lean on each other to be in response to the immediate need and long-term goal setting for early childhood education. These community partners included ourselves, which is the Workforce Development Board, in partnership with our contractor, Child Care Associates, the Head Start program, the Child Care Subsidy program, 2 nonprofits, and the Fort Worth ISD, the Fort Worth School District as well. SMU, which is a university that is in Dallas, Texas, who is our neighbor, went into partnership with us. So they provided all of the assessments, and we were just here to create a system of community for our providers, our mentors, and our teachers.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to note that shared services model, it was, I'm sure, very helpful having that alliance and that allegiance with all of your community partners and everyone really having a seat at the table to have a conversation as to what could be impactful here in our area. And the fact that one piece of that initiative, class, was incorporated is just amazing. So Nicole, to follow up on that, once that particular project and initiative sort of ended, how did you sort of reach this conclusion to continue to use class for your providers in Tarrant County?
Well, for us, it was absolutely the impact that the class initiative really did for our community. We were able to serve 552 classrooms over the course of our assessments and really provide strong professional development for 36 mentors across the programs. So that reach alone was enough to tell us that we needed to complete this, to ride this wave out. And I was explaining to Beja in a previous conversation that, it really gives me the warm fuzzies to really know that we are, impacting the children, because everything that we do in Tarrant County is child focused. And we know that the best way to make sure that quality is sustained inside of childcare programs inside of a quality rating improvement system or outside of a quality rating improvement system is the teacher interactions and how they impact the child. So we were able to get the children from early learning programs all the way into an ISD because we had a partner that was at the table with us that participated in the ISD program. So to us, it was a no-brainer. It was definitely a great overlay into our quality rated improvement system to really impact that category, and then in turn create a holistic impact for both children, teachers, and our mentors.
So Nicole, just to recap, can you please share that again? How many classrooms? You said
552 classrooms. So just think about how many children that is that we actually were able to serve.
That's a million children, total exaggeration, but
I know, but
thousands and thousands
ratios
of children. That is so amazing. And I'm, I can also assume and lean in with the assumption that that's something concrete, and you had that number to really show how impactful that was for your providers. That is amazing. But with that, just thinking through all the information you just shared, the growing pains, right? So, transitioning from being in a shared services model, it's a lot of different entities are helping to push that work forward. But when you decided to sort of incorporate class, particularly for your organization, talk about those growing pains with that. Obviously, the buy-in was maybe 50% already there because everyone was previously doing that work. But if you could talk about the buy-in, sort of the growing pains with that, and then also the unforeseen 2020 year that we had with COVID, how did that process continue to help your mentors and providers having to do everything pretty much virtually?
Absolutely. So, of course, when you are implementing something new to a system of professionals that are used to doing a system one way, or an assessment or an evaluation tool one way, and you, introduce something new, there's always going to be a certain level of pushback. And we're no stranger to those pushbacks and those conversations and those hard conversations to, bring the naysayers along. But the way that we did it was very strategic in really making sure that our language aligned across all organizations in introducing this to our mentors. We knew that we had to get their buy-in first, because if we didn't get their buy-in, then they were never going to be able to sell this new way of assessing to their programs, to their directors. And although SMU was doing the assessment component, we actually made sure that all of our mentors became class reliable. So that way they had experience with the tool. It wasn't scary. They had the lingo. They knew exactly, how to dissect such a big, assessment tool into terms that teachers and directors could receive. And then after we got the buy-in from our mentors, we ensured that we did that same practice with our directors and their teachers to ensure that everybody was very comfortable. They knew all of the steps and what to expect well before an assessor ever, knocked on their door. So everyone knew exactly what to expect. There were no surprises. And we did what Darlene was speaking of earlier about CQI. We CQI'd the heck out of this thing. So every single time, we saw an issue or a hiccup, we sat back, we all got around the table and we, talked about what was working, what wasn't working, and we improved. And so from that's where our professional learning community was so important to have, because that's where the mentors were able to learn from each other and lean on each other to understand exactly what they were doing and how they were going to take these scores and turn them into methods of practice and mentoring into the classroom. It was exceptional to see mentors that have been doing this job for years go through such a PLC, where on the other side of it, they were so excited to have this tool in their toolkit to really be impactful with their teachers. And we saw it. I mean, hearing testaments from mentors and teachers on how wonderful the tool was for them. Was exactly what we were, seeking to do when we first started this program. Now, when the pandemic hit, now that was a completely different story. That was one of those things that I know I'm preaching to everybody. I mean, all of us got our cheese moved, far away from us. And so we were really trying to, make sure that we were always being intentional in how we were going to continue our quality ratings and sustain them as we work through figuring out how we were going to mentor virtually. So I was able to reach out to Beja and ask her, okay, what can we do? How can we make this, transition into a virtual world? Because of course, like everyone else, we did not have the knowledge base like we do now to implement such a program at such high levels. Because we're talking about 210 providers that are in our QRIS system platform. and got, training. We all were trained on how to use it, the different language. We were able to actually do a little bit of CQI on our budgets and find money to be able to purchase technology for all of our providers, so they could be able to, so they could use the My Teachstone platform. The mentors were able to stay connected with their teachers, connected with their directors, really, assign different things for them to watch, create Zooms, create all kinds of things, and then also teach them how to do technology. Because, if you're a teacher inside of a classroom, your expertise on, how to get into a Zoom was very limited. So we were able to really just, again, truck along with class and Teachstone, and really sustain our providers and let them know that we're still here and quality is still the most important thing to us.
That was just so amazing. And I recollect that conversation we were having, how do we continue? I think Nicole's question, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but her question to me was, how do we keep this ball rolling? We have so many balls in the air. How do we make sure we don't drop one? And quality is not a ball that can afford to be dropped, obviously. And so we talked about My Teachstone, and I think they also partnered it with the Coaching with My Teachstone piece. So her mentors that are amazing, by the way, that Nicole leads, in addition to other leadership that is there alongside them, participated in that training, and they truly, truly learned the ins and outs of My Teachstone, because again, that mentor for that teacher or that program, they are the first teacher. They're helping them to understand the program and the tool, the verbiage, the language, and obviously being in a virtual setting, it's important that the teachers understand how to navigate the platform. And so her coaches receive that training to really, really help and support them. That's so amazing, Nicole. So kudos to you, and kudos to your whole team over there. A lot of those ladies in her program I know very, very well. But to sort of wrap up our time together, Nicole, we have an amazing audience with us today, folks who are decision makers and policy influencers, and maybe even some people in roles, whether they be a coach or a mentor or an instructional support specialist, a multitude of hats we get to wear in this early childhood space and education space. For someone who's maybe interested, maybe wanting to take that first step, if you will, to begin implementing class, or maybe just being able to parallel look at their current QRIS system and maybe see how class can be embedded in that, or as you've done, use class as a supporting tool, as a supporting mechanism. What would be, I guess, your best practices and or advice to someone listening or watching us today who would say, you know what, I've really been considering this, and interactions is obviously very, very important. What would you say they should do as their first step?
First step is don't be scared of it. I think that's the biggest thing. Class can be a little intimidating at first glance, just because it's, it's packaged different, but it's all of the things that we already know to do. If you've been in this field more than 3 years, you've had some level of professional development that has taught you all of the key indicators that are inside and embedded in the class assessment tool. I am so proud to say that in Tarrant County, we are absolutely doers. And so, the biggest thing is not being afraid to fail, just stepping out there, and just know that if you're going to, if you're keeping, children at the forefront, you can't fail. You're definitely going to be impacting them, because teacher-child interactions are so important. So it's always, my question is, why wouldn't you try it? Just to see. Like I said, our class for us is simply a tool. It's a tool in our toolbox, and we have a lot of tools that we use. There's a lot of things that our mentors use and lean on to ensure that they are doing the best CQI planning for their teachers, for their programs. They are making sure that they're being as intentional as they possibly can with everything, and making their experiences unique to fit the needs of each provider that they visit. So that's really, to me, that's the advice, and always, go back and figure out your best practices. If it's not working, try it again. That's the biggest thing. If you're having issues with pushback, like we always will have when something new is happening, just keep going through and explain the why. I think a lot of people push back in the beginning of an unknown new system is because they don't understand the why. So if you explain it in languages that individuals understand, because how you explain it to a mentor might not be the same language that you use when you explain it to a pre-K teacher. Make sure that you're explaining to them why they need to do it and the benefits for themselves and the benefits for ultimately the outcomes of children.
Appears we maybe had just a little bit of a technical difficulty, so our apology if anything seems to be a little choppy there. But just to recap our conversation with Nicole, first and foremost, Tarrant County is doing such an amazing job, obviously balancing their Texas Rising Star assessment tool, in addition to, as Nicole mentioned, utilizing CLAS as another source and another helpful partner within their toolbox in her area. I just think it's so amazing that Texas has truly taken such a huge leap, as I've mentioned before, moving teacher-child interactions from 20% to 40%. That truly speaks volumes as to the importance of teacher-child interactions and just overall the importance of the care that our caregivers here in Texas are providing for our children. So thank you again to Nicole for hopping on with us today and having such an amazing conversation. And I'm not sure if the technical difficulty came in the middle of that fun part, but Nicole is actually a California native, and I am a Texas girl. So, but she and I both reside here, and we're on such an amazing wave of positive changes happening here across the great state of Texas. So we are both just buckling up and getting ready for a very fun ride. So I want to turn it back over to Darlene. Darlene, do you have any final words or anything to share?
I would say that I'm just incredibly impressed and humbled by the great work of Texas. And I think that Texas always does things in a big way, and it's always a state to watch. And I think that the best is yet to come. And like, I loved your buckle up, because we're going to be buckling up just to sit here and watch and cheer and be supportive, because I think what they have started and the momentum is something that's going to continue to grow and show great quality across the state. So happy to have Nicole share those. And I would give another shout out to their investment over time, because it takes time, it takes energy, and it takes that support as a system. And they've really done that well, the support that they talked about for their teachers, for their leaders and their mentors. And so sticking with it, even through that pandemic, and they're still growing strong, is so impressive. So we are so deeply appreciative. And others, you heard her. Don't be scared. And just sometimes it's just getting started, and start with the things teachers do best, interactions. They know how to interact, and the CLAS tool just helps them to have higher quality interactions and to do what they do best in a better way. So next slide. So if you have questions today, because if you're like me, you start thinking like, oh, I wish I could have found this out from Nicole, or I want to ask Beja this, or I had a thought pop into my head. So if you're having any of those moments, please pop those into the chat box, and we will capture those, and we will respond to those in the email that will come out with the link to this recording. So please take the time now that you can keep putting those in there. Even when we move the slides, we want to capture your questions. So feel free to put those there. Next slide. I'm going to give it back to Gloria now. Thank you.
Thank you, Darlene. Thank you, Beja and Nicole, for that robust discussion. It's nice to hear how Texas, though quite unique in the way they operate, CLAS is still relevant and an impactful tool for Texan children and educators. So thank you both, and Darlene for grounding our discussion. Before we leave you all today, a couple of things that I want to share with you. First is about our upcoming webinars. October is Head Start Awareness Month, and we love our Head Start partners here at Teachstone. So we actually have a series of webinars planned with a focus on Head Start throughout October and December, or throughout October and, I said that right. Throughout October and December. The first is on the 20th of this month, where we'll talk about strategies that Head Start programs can use to build stronger relationships and to drive their impact. The next is going to be on November 9th. There we will discuss ways teachers can stay consistent in their teaching practice and how to feel more confident throughout the school year. And the last is in December 14th. This will look into the new year, which is coming up quickly. You'll hear from class consultants on what to expect with class in Head Start in the year 2022. We want to hear your questions on this topic specifically with class. With how class will impact your Head Start program. You can submit questions from the registration page, and the registration page can be found on teachstone.com/events. You'll find all of our webinars and other upcoming events on that page. And then finally, I've got to talk about our new podcast called Teaching with Class. We're so excited about this new free resource for our wonderful teachers out there. This podcast will explore topics that are important to educators. And the best thing about these bite-sized episodes is that teachers will walk away with real tactical strategies they can use right away in the classroom. So I promise it's worth your time. You can see some of the most recent episodes here on your screen. We publish new episodes every other week, every other Thursday. You can subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. And you can also listen in on teachstone.com/teaching. But with that, I want to thank you all for joining us, including our panelists. Your time is greatly appreciated and valued. But that will wrap us up today. And just as a reminder, you will receive the recording of this webinar and other resources and the answers to any questions that you all have put in the chat within 24 hours. So all right, everyone, take care and have a good day. Goodbye.
Bye all.
Bye.